I got a strange going on out here. Something just killed my dog.
Something killed your dog?
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for coming back to the Cryptid Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Hamilton, as always. And before we get into who I have, I got a really cool special guest on for you guys tonight, for real, like legit. I say that every time, and all my guests are important and cool and special and unique and exciting. This one I kind of fanboy over because I follow this person on TikTok. So, but anyway, I just want to say thanks for all the support you guys show the channel. Thank you so much. This channel is growing super fast. I couldn't do it without all the support from everybody who takes the time out of their busy day, even to watch 5 minutes of the show. Thank you so much. Remember that I do have a $2.99 membership. With that, you get exclusive early access to a Saturday show. I do those once a month, so our members will get that show first, and then it'll later then be released to the public. Without further ado, guys, I can't get this person on fast enough, so let's bring on our guest, Amanda, and you will know her as the Bigfoot Lady from TikTok. Amanda, how's it going?
Oh, I am great, Daniel. How are you this evening?
Doing good. I'm glad we were able to work out a little bit of kinks in the chain. So
absolutely. We've been trying to connect for a few weeks now, and it, like I said, it literally just fell out that it happened to work this evening. I had an opening, and you did too. So we're like, let's make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the Bigfoot Lady. Now, if anybody has not seen her on TikTok, all you got to do is do a search for the Bigfoot Lady, and this is who you'll see pop up. What's really cool about Amanda, there it is. Here's me face.
Me face.
Tell everybody where it is, because I said you had a dream job. So
yes,
tell
everybody.
I
do have a dream job.
You do?
Besides doing the social media stuff that I'm doing now, I am the Bigfoot Lady at Expedition Bigfoot, the Sasquatch Museum in Blue Ridge, Georgia. It's the Bigfoot Museum that's owned by David and Melinda Becerra, and it's been open since 2016. And one of their many claims to fame is that it's the largest Bigfoot museum by square footage alone. It's got the largest public cast collection open to viewers in the US, on top of all kinds of other things. So the fact that my daily to and from work to work, what I do every day is interacting with people at a Bigfoot museum. I mean, like I said, it's literally a dream job, and I am so blessed and so thankful for it. And yeah, it's been a blast. I've been with them almost 4 years now, so definitely enjoy it.
So we're definitely going to get in, because I sent you out an email with a couple of questions on you've had some encounters, but I still want to talk more, because I love nothing more, because the museum is pretty much like a mom and pop shop. It
is. That's what I tell people all the time who come in. I even had some people earlier today, actually, who were coming in, and after going through the museum, they were just kind of gushing about it, like, wow, the exhibits are so well done and everything. And I always try to brag on David and his hard work, like, no, this is mom and pop, it's just owned by him and his wife. They did all the work on this. The building was just an empty slate when they took it over, and they built it up from the ground up, all the displays, all the exhibits and everything. It's like I've even had somebody say, it's like, this is like Disney quality stuff. And like, I've worked for Disney, and this is Disney quality stuff. And it's like, well, don't tell me about it. Leave them a review about it and tell them about it. So you definitely make sure that they get that. Cause yeah, they've, like I said, I'm gushing too, because I'm so proud of them and what they've done with that place. It's one of the best Bigfoot museums out there, because the displays are amazing. What he's able to put into a small 3,000 square foot exhibit area, you have everything from Native American folklore. You have, the cast collection that I mentioned. You've got stuff from different famous adventurers like Tom Slick. You've got a DNA lab, you've got witness testimony, you've got the Sierra Sounds exhibits, a huge diorama, a life-size exhibit, a recreation, a Sasquatch recreation, all these different audio stations. There's so much knowledge that's crammed into such a small space. So you can spend hours in there. It's awesome.
Well, let me ask you a few questions about the museum. So,
Absolutely.
how it does it ever have a downtime where it's not open, or is it open year round?
It is open year round. When they first started, it did have some downtime because they were, still getting the doors open and everything, but no, the last, oh goodness, probably 5, 6 years, yeah, they've been open 7 days a week, almost 365. They are closed on, like, Christmas, New Year's, and Easter, and, yeah, there's a small downtime in January, like, right after all the holidays are over with, but other than that, no, it's been wide open. I started there in 2019, and they had just been open 3 years then. And there was, a lot of slow days. I would be there working by myself, a couple of days, several days a week. And now it's compared to where it was when I started in 2019 to now, it's night and day. I would never have expected it to be as busy as it is. What we used to consider like the busiest day we've ever had back in those early days is just a normal Monday for the museum now.
Mhm. So let me ask you, on an average, how many people would you say visit the museum a month?
Oh, goodness. I don't know if I had those specifics off the top of my head. Might be something you have to message them about and get those,
Okay.
specifics about.
Well, get me contact with them, and I will definitely. And here's my next question:
Okay.
why did they start this museum?
So, I'll speak for David a little bit because I've heard him and Melinda both share the story so much. He had been into Bigfoot and skunk ape, being from Florida, since he was 12 years old. And growing up down there in the 70s, they were constantly having news stories coming on the TV about, the skunk ape and people having sightings and things like that. And he would see news articles and stuff, and he realized, he's like, this isn't what I'm reading about in school. What they're telling me here and then what they're telling me here, it's not jiving. And then, of course, the legend of Boggy Creek and all that kind of stuff, came out around that same time. So he's always had a deep passion for the subject matter. And he's been in a BFRO. He's done several different groups on top of independent research for 40 plus years at this point now. So once he retired from down there and moved up here to the North Georgia mountains, he come up here and was working at a job, and people were coming around all the time, asking, so, well, what is there for kids to do around here? What is there for families to do around here? And he always had this love for those classic roadside attractions that you used to see back in the day. Those are some of
Mhm.
his fondest memories. And he's always like, how cool would it be to have a Bigfoot museum, where you can share all this knowledge that he's gained over the years and have all this information in one spot that people can come and, where's the evidence? Right here. If you're looking for evidence, here it is. And it just so happened that the building that it is located at now happened to come up available for rent, and it's literally right here on the side of the main highway. So I mean, you can't miss it if you're coming up here into the North Georgia mountains. And like I said, he took a leap of faith, went in there and looked at it, and he's like, "Yep, this is it." And built it from the ground up. Like I said, it was a blank slate on the inside, and like I said, took him probably about a year or so to get it all up and going. And he said that with before he even got the doors open, he was just putting some of the signage and stuff like that on the outside of the building, people seeing, Bigfoot or Sasquatch Museum and stuff. He had people coming up and asking me, "Hey, what's this?" And local people here already were coming to him and started sharing their stories and encounters and experiences with him. So now he not only has the museum, but he uses it as a hub to run the research out of. So
Uh,
that's kind of the basic story of how Expedition Bigfoot, the Sasquatch Museum, came about.
that's awesome. And it's a great story. It's a great homegrown story. Um,
hmm
Now let me ask you: is there an admission fee to? to go into
There
the
is, yeah, it's a
museum?
$9 for adults, $6 for kids, between the ages of 5 and 12. Anybody 4 and under is free, and they do offer a free admission for the active military members with their ID. And, if anybody has any questions about admission or any other frequently asked questions that you might find, concerning the museum, they do have a website. It's just expeditionbigfoot.com, and, I kinda brag a little bit because I helped build the website, and,
Awesome.
a lot of the information that you have, if any of your listeners want to find out about it, yeah, just go to expeditionbigfoot.com and all your info's there.
Perfect, perfect. Okay. So, now let's travel back in time to, I believe it was 2001,
Hmm.
when you didn't only have 1, but you had 2 Bigfoot encounters. Um,
Correct.
one that involved your brother,
Hmm.
and the other one, I'm not sure. It's kind of more of like a
It
w
would
has
be
kind of a like a woo
it would be
factor.
my yeah, it was the first one would have been me, my brother, and my cousin. And I kind of consider that my quote unquote main Bigfoot encounter because I know 110% that that's what that was. The second one, as I delve into the story more, I refer to that as the bearskin rug creature just because that's what it looked like. And I'll tell more of that as I go along. And I was the only one to see that thing that day. My siblings and the neighbor kids and stuff who were there with me that day, they didn't see anything. So, to travel back in time to 2001, which showing my age a little bit, it makes you realize how long ago that was, but not so long ago. I would have been 15 at the time, and my brother would have been 12. Growing up here in the North Georgia mountains, even though it was 2001, for my family and where we lived, it was probably still 20, 30 years back in time. So we were actually on some very old family property that had been in my family for probably 200 plus years. And there's some importance to that as I'll carry on the story. My father and my uncle were cutting firewood on that property. And so, of course, they had us teenagers out there helping them haul firewood. And my uncle, he had just remarried and he now had a stepdaughter, which would be our new cousin. And so we were always super close as a family. And there was a particular spot on that property that we called the carven tree because that's exactly it. It was this massive, massive oak tree that generations of people in the family had carved their name on over the years. And so we're like, hey, she's our cousin now. Let's go have her. She's part of the family. Let's go have her put her name on the tree. So my dad and my uncle gave us kids a break, and where we were at, it was on a very, very large hayfield. So we were walking across the hayfield, and the hay was very, very tall. They just kind of let it grow wild for the season. So I remember it being very tall. And again, this is all for a reason. I'm trying to paint a picture here. So we get to the end of the hayfield, and we go into the tree line, and it's probably about 100 yards back into the tree line, and then that is where this carving tree was at. And not only was the tree massive, but it also grew up right next to this giant, like, rock boulder outcrop type thing. And there underneath, it was actually almost like a not a cave, but like a really big area underneath this rock where you could tell where people or animals or anything like that had bedded down. It almost was very reminiscent to the Lion King Pride Rock, you know, how
Mm,
that kind of comes up at a sharp angle. So that tree grew literally up next to it. So I say that because my when things started happening, my brother was down on the ground. Him and my cousin were down on the ground, and I was up on top of that rock, up at the tree, and I had my back to the woods. My brother, he was down below and looking up in my direction. So again, we've been there probably, 20, 30 minutes, just goofing off, carving our names in there. And all of a sudden, my brother gets all apprehensive. He's like, Amanda, we need to go. I'm like, no, we just got here, man. Let's hang out here for a little while longer. And he's like, no, we've got to go like right now. And he takes off running, and my cousin takes off running too. I don't ask questions. If they're running, I'm running too. So I jump down off the rock, go around, and I'm a couple feet behind them. They're up ahead of me, and so they get to the tree line before I do. And so right as I get to the tree line, something let out the most god awful roar, scream, howl. I don't really know what to call it or describe it, but I just know that it was the loudest thing that I've ever heard in my entire life. But it was like almost like a roar kind of sound. And it was so loud that it caused me to, put my hands over my ears and almost, fall to my knees. And so I look up like this, and I see my brother and my cousin running through the hay, and that sound going off, and all the birds are flying up out of the hay. So I get my feet back under me. I catch up to my brother. I'm like, what was that? Like, what is going on? What is happening? He's like, I think it was freaking Bigfoot. I'm like, you're kidding me, right? No. And I believed him. I 100% believed him. I was like, holy crap. And so we catch back up to my dad and my uncle. And they're like, well, what's up with you kids? I could tell, we were all flustered, something was wrong. And my brother told him what happened, what he saw, and they just kind of laughed and they're like, "Oh, so you kids just ran into the booger, didn't you?"
Oh,
Like it was no big thing at all. And so, family history, I had been told my entire life by my grandmother, my dad's mom, my Nana Jean, that there was a booger on that property. And as a lot of people now know, especially here in the South, that booger is another term for these things, for Sasquatch or Bigfoot.
mhm.
For my folks, though, they use that term kind of interchangeably for, for ghost haints, wildcats, panthers, other monsters and things that go bump in the night. It was just, they were boogers. Everything was a booger. And so I had always assumed that when they were referring to the booger, they were referring to something else. I had never put two and two together that they were talking about a Bigfoot. So, like I said, my dad and my uncle, they just laughed it off like it was no big thing. And when we told my grandma the same thing, she said that it literally the exact same words. "Oh, you kids done run into the booger, didn't you?" We told her what happened. She's like, "Yeah, your Uncle Kerm ran into one up there in the 1950s. That's why he would never come back around right there." So that was the story we had heard our whole life
Mhm.
is, yeah, something ran Uncle Kerm off up there. He would never come back because he got too scared. So what my brother ended up describing that he saw was he was looking up, he saw me, and then up the hill, up the mountain behind me, probably 50 yards or so. I'm very terrible with number directions. Like if I was standing at the museum, I could be like, it would be from the door to the other door at the other end.
Right.
Anyhow, he said it was the creature was up on the hill back there, and it had one arm around a tree, kind of using it, kind of leaning on it, but he could see its full body. He said it was standing in like almost perfect posture, very distinct, human-like shape. But he said it was covered in reddish brown hair, kind of orangutan looking, and that the hair on its face didn't cover the full, but it kind of started here at the cheek and kind of went on back. And he said it just gave him the most ominous, look and feeling like, "Oh, you kids have done walked up into my living room. Y'all better go." And that's why it spooked him so bad, besides obviously seeing this thing. And he said it made me not comfortable at all. Like we needed to leave right then. So that's what he did. He took off running, whether I was coming with him or not. So I always wonder, people's like, what do you wish you'd turned around? Do you wish you'd saw? And I'm like, yes and no. I'm actually kind of glad that I didn't see it just because hearing it was terrifying enough as it was. So like 5 stories within the same story. Years later, now as an adult, my brother and I, we both have, I moved out when I was 18, and we've both taken different paths in life. And so, we talk about this every now and then, but not really in great detail. So fast forward to me starting my job at Expedition Bigfoot. People were asking me all the time, "Hey, so you seen Bigfoot?" And, so I started saying, actually, yeah, actually, I've had an experience. And so I started sharing this experience a lot more with people. And so I got in touch with my brother. I was like, "Hey, brother, I'm sharing this experience with a lot more people. I'm even started sharing it on different podcasts and stuff like that. So I just want to get my ducks in a row. Am I remembering all the details how you remember it? Because, you saw the thing, I didn't see it. I just heard it." And he says, "What do you mean?" I said, "I heard it. It roared." And she's like, "I never heard a thing, sis." It's like, how could you not hear anything? It was the loudest thing I've ever heard in my life. He's like, "No, I just saw it up there looking at us. I never heard anything." Because that's what I was telling him. That's what I remember the most about it was hearing it. He's like, "Well, what I remember the most about it is its eyes." And I was like, "Well, what about its eyes?" He said, they were red. And you're like, "What do you mean red?" He's like, "They were glowing red." And you have to remember, this is the daytime.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until recently that he told me that. He's like, "It was already crazy enough that we were seeing Bigfoot, Amanda. The last thing I want to tell you is that this thing had glowing red eyes at us." It's like, "No, no, I get it. I mean, I hear it from people all the time anymore, from other witnesses. So I mean, you're not crazy. I get it." So it was so bizarre looking on it now that, I heard it. He didn't, and my cousin didn't, but he saw it and it had, glowing red eyes that we hear from other witnesses all the time. And they said this was daytime, so it wasn't, eye shine. It was emitting its own light.
Hmm.
And looking back on to the sound that I heard, now having delved more into some Bigfoot knowledge and things, I think that I was most likely zapped is what happened to
Hmm.
me. The reason why whenever I was running and I got hit with that sound from behind, and it was just so loud and so all encompassing. The only way I can describe how it felt was, my hubby is actually a really big metalhead, so we've been to several, like, really heavy concerts where,
Hmm.
you're close to those speakers and stuff, that loud was where you could just feel it in your chest.
Yep.
That was how it felt, but it came from behind. So for people who don't know what I mean by zapped, that's actually a reference to infrasound, and, it's a decibel levels that are too low for, um most ears to hear, but you feel it, and it
Hmm.
causes you to become super, super disoriented. There's other animals that have that capability, elephants, tigers, lots of different animals have that capability. So the fact that Bigfoot could have that capability is definitely not out of the wheelhouse.
Right. Right. So, and it's funny that you check back with your brother. I mean, I wish I could check back with my brother and my dad
Yeah.
on the encounters I had. Unfortunately, they both passed away. But
Mm,
um, I saw like a reddish, amberish eye shine
mhm,
um when I had my sighting when I was 12 back in 1984. So I'm
mhm.
showing my age now.
Showing your age a little bit, yeah.
um And, yeah, and then we passed. I kinda peeked up from the floorboard of the front of the car and kinda looked, and then I saw her, and you could still I saw her eyes as clear as day,
Mm,
and they were reddish amberish color, and then I watched her blink her eyes twice, and then that's when my dad just kept driving by, and then we had that night, so but that was an incredible encounter because you described, in my opinion, infrasound perfect because again in 92 my last sighting or last encounter my brother and
mhm.
I believe that my brother and I we were both hit with infrasound and
Yeah.
it made us both nauseous, pain in our chest,
Mhm.
massive headache, equilibrium was off a little bit. Yeah, so it was, if you haven't been hit by it, it's an experience.
It definitely is, because that's one thing that's always been so odd to me trying to, remember this. Like, I remember getting back up there to our dad and my uncle and stuff, but then I don't really remember a lot of, like, what transpired at the rest of that day, like, how we ended up at my Nana's telling her about it and stuff. So it's like, am I like missing something up here? Did something get, memory lapse take effect or whatever, which is actually interesting to actually is a good segue into my second experience.
Perfect.
So I actually didn't remember this particular experience until after I started working at Expedition Bigfoot. So a little history about myself. I've actually had tons of paranormal and supernatural experiences in my life. And a lot of that I feel is hereditary stuff that I inherited from a lot of my family members who also have um, not necessarily that ability. Where there's another word I'm looking for. People who have that gift, I guess, if you want to call it a gift. Um, so this probably would have been around the same time as the first encounter, and the reason being is just because I kinda remember how old I was and how old my siblings were. So this would have been at my mom and dad's house, which wouldn't have been but maybe 3 or 4 miles as the crow flies from the other property where the carving tree incident happened. So, me, my brother, and other siblings and all the neighbor kids. We were the house that everybody came over to. So we were all there playing in our driveway. We had a little, fort thing we had made there in the woods, like country kids do. And they were riding their bicycles up and down the road. And it was fall. And I remember specifically it was fall because it was a very bright day and the leaves had freshly fallen. So they were very bright in color, those bright oranges, bright browns and stuff. And they were very crunchy. And so I was up in the woods a little bit, and my brothers and all the kids and everybody had just got down out of the woods and into the driveway, and I heard a lot of crunching coming up from behind me, something coming up really fast in the leaves enough to make me go, "What's that?" I thought like a deer was about to run out at me or something. Something was, charging at us. And as you know, Daniel, in a lot of witness encounters that people tell, it's like time slowed down. It's like all this happened within a split second, but your brain is going 100 miles an hour at the same time, remembering everything. I turn around and I look towards the sound that I'm hearing. And as I turn, the sound stops. And I don't know if the creature was already on its belly or if it had flopped onto its belly right at there at that same time. But I turn and I look and I'm like, first off, I'm like, what the heck am I looking at? Because it wasn't a bear, it wasn't a monkey, it wasn't a human. It was like you'd taken all three of those things and combined it into one. But it was so bizarre because it was laying on its flat on its belly with its arms stretched out to the side like this, head down, mouth wide open, and agape.
No.
And that's why what I was looking at. Is like, am I seeing a bear laying there? Because it looked like a bearskin rug, but the face was different. It didn't look quite like a bear. And I'm looking at this thing like, what the heck? Am I seeing this? And I could hear the kids. I'm like, okay, yeah, this is real. I'm not actually dreaming this. And they holler louder at me. It's like, Amanda. So I turn and turn back, and I'm like, I turn and look back, and then just that split second of me turning my head, looking at them and looking back, that sucker was gone. And it was the most bizarre thing because from it, I couldn't see past like the mid forearm right here on both arms because they went behind the tree where it was at. And from the waist, the mid back and waist down, there was nothing. I couldn't see. It just blended in completely with the leaves. And that's why it was so bizarre as I was trying to figure out, like, am I actually seeing this thing or is it actually just a play of in my pareidoia, seeing something in the leaves or whatever? No, it was real. Something was looking back at me. And it was so bizarre because the hair and everything, it just blended in so perfectly with the leaves, except for the head, the shoulders, the face and mouth and everything. And it was very obvious hair. And it was hair all over the face It didn't have like any bald spot, but the mouth was wide open, like abnormally wide. I don't
Oh,
really remember teeth too well. If it did have teeth, they were so dark and black that it probably just kind of blended in. It was very dark, like a chow dog. I don't know if you're familiar with
mhm,
chows. They have that really black mouth. And the brow ridge was very flat and prominent all the way across. It didn't have like a distinguished, two say it was all the way like very Neanderthal, as you imagine that
right.
across. I don't really remember a nose, but if it was so it would have been so squished up in that lip or mouth that I couldn't see it. But the eyes, it didn't have like whites to the eyes. They were just solid marbles. And I always remember in Jaws, the guy
Yep.
where he's like talking about the shark is like they're like black like a doll's eyes. That's all I can see when I picture that is those creepy shark eyes because
You
that's what it looked like.
you honestly, uh, not only on my show, I've had a lot of people tell me their encounters. I've had people email me their encounters, but
Hmm.
listening to other encounters on podcasts or reading other encounters, there are not many Bigfoot encounters that are doing that have done to me what years just did to me.
Okay.
I have goosebumps in the way you just do you let me ask you this, do you think it was spider crawling?
I've wondered that if it was spider crawling up to us because like you said, it was in such a but it was prone on the ground, so maybe it
Flattened
flattened
out?
itself but yeah, like I said, the kids didn't see anything or anything, and again, I've had so much weird stuff happen to me in my life. I've had seen so many odd, bizarre things that I just kinda like, "Okay, that was weird," and I just kinda kept on going with my day.
Oh
I know
my
that sounds
gosh.
weird, and that's what's the memory thing I was mentioning earlier, that's what brought that back up, or my segue, I should say. When I started working at Expedition Bigfoot, I hadn't remembered this. Again, I've had so many weird things happen to me and I've seen so many bizarre things. I just kind of filed it
Mhm.
back there in my mind with everything else. And I didn't really remember it, but I forget. I remember exactly when it was. It was in July. I'd been working there a couple of months and somebody came in, and I wish I could remember their story, but I don't, unfortunately. But they were sharing something. And for whatever reason, whatever they were describing, how they described it sounded so familiar to the description of what I remember. All of a sudden, the memory of this just thing just came flooding back like a you hear people describe a
Mhm.
repressed memory. Like all I could do was every time I looked in like, a 50-foot direction, and if you're ever looking in the museum where the counter is, it's a long, narrow hallway for the gift shop area. And every time I'd look down there, like all I could see was that thing looking back at me. And for
Mm.
several days, I had nightmares remembering this thing.
Yeah.
And I tried to draw out a picture of it, and I can share that with you later. I wish I'd thought about that prior to the show.
Yeah.
I did end up drawing out a little bit of what I remember it looking like and what I remember because, again, I thought maybe I just dreamt it. Was this actually real? But no, it was very real, and it affected me a lot to where I just kind of repressed it back.
You know,
So
an image
it
just
was
popped
so
into my head.
bizarre.
An image just popped into my head, when
Mhm,
and again, it's about you looking and it's got its chin forward and its mouth just unusually wide open, kinda.
mhm.
Do you remember you probably don't because 'cause you're not as old as I am, but do you remember the original
Maybe.
It with Tim Curry, the original It, not the one that
Uh-huh.
okay, there's a part where he opens up his mouth and his mouth just gets super wide, and for some
Mhm.
reason, that just popped in my head. It's kinda like a a a demon clown or something like that, but looking like a
Yeah,
Bigfoot.
it was
Oh,
so
man,
unnatural.
that's
I'm looking at
insane.
my phone right here because, I just recently, gave a presentation at a Bigfoot conference, and there was an image that I found that was very similar, and will it let me pull it up big? Yes, okay. So I'll try to get it. So that was very similar. I don't
That
remember
nope.
teeth like that or a nose like that, but just how unnaturally wide that
Yeah,
is.
that's crazy.
That's what I remember.
Nope,
And
no thanks.
yeah, let's see if it'll let
That's
me pull it up.
that's no bueno.
Yeah, here's my drawing. Again, I wish
Oh no,
I'll
I
pull it.
can see it. No, that is no, no, no. I'm
Yeah, no,
nope.
like looking back on it, it's like I'm telling this story and it's so creepy, but I'm like, and I'm giggling and laughing about it, but I'm like, that happened to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny you say,
Ugh.
the environment you work in, it's like you said, it kicked up a repressed memory,
Mhm. It
and it
did.
it brought to the I mean, and it's just like, a lot of times when I first told my first encounter, when one rushed the camper that we were living in, and it felt like it was trying to push the camper over,
Oh, gracious.
and that was before my sighting.
Mhm.
That was like weeks or months before my sighting, probably more months. But, I'd always remembered my sighting picture, but then going through all the research and podcasts and stories and listening to people tell their stories, it made me realize that when I was around between 7 and 9, I had two encounters.
Mhm.
And after, I had one when I was in the military, and then I had my final one when I was um, uh, in Tennessee with my little brother, in
Mhm.
92. And then I remember something um, when I was probably like in fifth grade in West Virginia, and hearing my great grandmother, my nanny,
Mhm.
calling them boogers. Like, boys, y'all better
Oh,
not go
yeah.
out in them woods because them boogers will get you.
Oh my god, that's 100% exactly what my nana would say. She's like, "You kids better get inside before it gets darker, them boogers will get you."
You hear them boogers whistling, you better come on back in the house. I'm like, whew. And there'd be
Mm,
times where we heard whistling, or we'd hear, uh, hollers or yells or whatever. And I remember
mhm.
the first time I heard when I asked her, I go, "What was that?" She goes, "Oh, it's just them boogers. Them hillbillies up there. They're just getting crazy." And now I know,
Right? Especially up
exactly.
there in the hills of West Virginia. Whew.
Oh yeah, because we growing up, I'm sure you kind of grew up similar, different era,
Oh,
but
yeah.
if you're out in the woods, you've got woods around you as a kid. What
Mhm.
do? You
We lived in the woods.
you explore everywhere, and there'd be times when me and my cousins go out there, and we'd hear some noises, and we're like, "Well, what's that?" And we're trying to rationalize what they are, and
Mhm.
then one of the older ones of the cousins, because I was like in the middle.
Yeah.
We had the two younger cousins, and then it was me and my cousin, who was a year older than me, and then we had the two oldest cousins, so
Mhm.
six of us. And the oldest one was like, "Hey guys, let's head on back," and then
Mhm.
they kind of, I think they may have known something, or they just they had more common sense than we did, being older than us. But it's just you see these things, and a lot of people don't understand, especially in your neck of the woods and going up and through, East Tennessee, Middle Tennessee, up
Mhm.
and through Kentucky, West Virginia, parts of Ohio, where the Appalachian Trail goes up, goes all the way from Maine all the way down.
Yep.
It's a lot of weird stuff happens on that trail
Yeah.
and around those
Appalachia is
mountains.
its own thing.
It is. It legit is. So let's talk about. I got super excited because the email
Okay.
that you sent, you said, "Well, I have some paranormal." And at one time I had a paranormal podcast, but because I was getting um, some really unwanted attention from a few
Understand.
individuals, talking about things I didn't really want to talk about, I just shut it all down. But then you mentioned you had some, let's see if I can get this quote from you here. Your quote stated, let's see here, where are you at? What did you say? How did you exactly put? Oh, I've also had many paranormal experiences with other unknown animals or
Mhm.
entities throughout my life. Now, you had mentioned two things that I've only heard people whisper about and not really get into too much detail. And I had
Mhm.
a guest on from I think it was Redline Cryptids or something like that.
Mhm.
Um, and he'd mentioned a pterodactyl,
Okay.
and so I believe that's what you mentioned.
That is, yes.
Let's hear
So
it.
let's hear it. Okay. So this would have been when I was much, much younger. And again, another one of those things that just happened, very, very quickly, very briefly. And so for our generation, I know if you remember the Land Before Time, the
Oh,
cartoon, yeah, everybody, yeah, special
Ducky,
place in our heart, right? Ducky,
Duck,
yeah,
yeah,
Petrie was my little buddy.
yep.
So
Littlefoot.
and Littlefoot, yep, all of those guys. So I attributed the description of the thing that I saw. I called it Petrie because it looked like Petrie. So I was playing in the sandbox at my parents' house, and I don't know for why I was looking I looked up, and I thought what I saw at the moment was a woodpecker because, we have really big woodpeckers and hawks down here.
Hmm.
And, it flew over me, and then, just very, soared very softly, on over the house because, very thick woods, so we only have a very small area of open sky that you see. And it wasn't humongous like what you would imagine a big pterodactyl. That's why I bring up the image of Petrie from Land Before Time because it was very small. But it very, very instantly go, I'm like, that looks like a it looks like Petrie because it had a long beak and the point that comes out of the back of the head, and it had the membranous wings. That's what made me
Whoa.
go, "Wait a minute." It's because the wings were yellow. You could see the light coming through it, and it very obviously wasn't feathers. It was membranous. It was what's the word I'm looking for?
Almost like bat
Reptilian.
wings. Yeah, almost like bat
Yeah,
wings.
kind of bat wingish, yeah. But I could definitely very very distinctly remember, the yellow and the red in the wings when I looked up at it. I was like, "Mom, I just saw a Petrie." So, I didn't again, I've seen so many weird things that just was one of those things that I've kind of filed in the back of my mind. It's like, "Yeah, maybe I saw it, maybe I didn't." I was a kid, maybe I was seeing things or not. But then talking to other people, especially as you just mentioned, I've started listening to more podcasts and other witnesses coming out, talking to people working at the museum. I'm like, okay, maybe there is something to this. People are seeing pterodactyls, thunderbirds,
Mhm.
dinosaurs, raptor-like dinosaurs all throughout the United States. So seeing something small like that isn't out of the realm of possibility at all. Whether it's a living, breathing, physical creature that's still here in our day and time, or if it's a time slip and you're seeing something from a different realm or whatever, that's a whole different conversation. But it's not an unpossibility.
Yeah. And now I'm a huge nerd when it
Hmm.
comes to like Dungeons and Dragons.
Hmm.
Okay. And I had a character that rode an animal that you also may have seen.
Yes.
And let's hear
So,
that story.
yeah, so a lot of our D&D people and of course our Game of Thrones nerds are familiar now, especially it's in everybody's vocabulary, dire wolves. That's the only thing I can describe it. I didn't know what to call it back then. It was just a gigantic wolf. I was so at my parents' house, my grandma, the one I actually was mentioning in the earlier stories, she lived two or three houses down in the holler, so we could walk back and forth to her house after school all the time. So I had walked down from my parents' house down to her house. She wasn't home. So I had turned around to go and walk back up to our house. And she had also another big hayfield beside her house. and there was always things out on the hayfield. You could sometimes see deer out there. Um, at one time there was horses, that kind of stuff. So I'm always looking out into the hayfield. Sure enough, there was something there this time. Right as the hayfield kind of little small crest right at the far end, right next to the tree line. All of a sudden, something just like out of like Balto, this giant white wolf comes and crests over this hill. I see it, it sees me. Again, I'm frozen, that fight or flight kicks in, and it's just like before. Am I seeing this? Is this
Mhm.
actually real? No, it's there. It's real. It sees me and I see it. So in that split second, I had to decide, Nana is at home, so I can't get into her house. Do I run the opposite direction? But it was a beautiful animal. Looking back on it now, I was terrified at the beginning, looking back, but looking back on it now, it was this gorgeous animal. It was just like something out of a painting. It crested over this hill. It had this gorgeous, thick hair, thick. It was very, not like a mane, like a lion's mane, but you ever seen like, the alpha wolf,
Yep.
has the very thick hair around here, but it was this beautiful solid white. And like I said, it was this gorgeous animal. And so I just did the stupid thing and I just took off running.
Yeah.
And made it back to mom and dad's house. Thankfully, it didn't chase me, but I did look back, and it was still standing there. It watched me run off until I, kept going till I didn't wanna look back anymore and made it back up to mom and dad's. So, yeah, that's another thing that's happened in my life.
Now,
So, apparently, I have a magnetism for weird things.
do you recall either around the time or after, as you were older and learn how to do a little more, deep diving into information
Mhm,
around the area. Do you ever recall like maybe any reports of like cattle missing or livestock missing of some kind? Because here's the thing: if
mhm,
again people say, "Oh, dire wolves," hey, i- in this type of community, this type of field of cryptids,
mhm.
the realm of probability is so huge.
Yeah.
You just don't know, because when I was coming home from the southern part of Michigan up through the UP, the Upper
Mhm.
Peninsula, my wife and I, we were just west of Escanaba, and it was super, super foggy outside. I could maybe see 2 truck lengths ahead of me. And as we were driving, it was like 1, 2 in the morning. Um, um, I saw this thing moving in the fog, moving from
Mhm.
the right side of the road to the left side of the road. So I'm the only vehicle on the road, and it's turn my brights on. It completely washed out my sight. I,
Yeah.
I couldn't see, so I kept my driving lights on, and I started slowing down when this figure started making a form,
Mm.
and I realized it was on 4 legs,
Okay.
and it was the biggest and blackest wolf I had ever seen in my life.
Oh, wow.
And this thing and up here, we have timber wolves, and timber
Mhm. I
wolves
was
are
about to say, I know y'all have wolves up in that area.
they're like the biggest wolf, a timber
Mhm.
wolf is. This thing dwarfed a timber wolf.
Wow.
This thing walked and literally stopped maybe 20 feet from my truck, and
Oh, wow.
I drive a 1,500 Chevy Silverado crew
Mhm.
cab, four-wheel drive, and if this thing was so big, we sat there and we looked at each other, and it took everything in my power not to get out of my truck and wanna go up and hug this thing and
Oh
give
my
it a
goodness.
big hug because it was beautiful, but if it wanted to, it coulda walked up to the hood of my truck and stuck its chin on the hood of my truck,
Oh my goodness.
and he just
That's
looked at me.
crazy how big. And your
He
wife was seeing this the whole time
wife
too?
was wife was out.
Oh,
She
she
was
was out
sound
cold.
asleep,
Oh goodness, never fails.
and I just sat there and I'm like, "Oh my gosh." And as I stopped and I'm looking at this guy, and it only happened for seconds,
Yes.
but he stopped and then he just kind of meandered off to the rest and then went down into the woods, and then I assume the lake's over there somewhere. But
Mhm.
as we started going, my wife's like, "What?" I go, "You would not believe what I just saw. I just saw a huge wolf."
Yeah.
"Oh, you did not. You did not." I'm like, "Okay, what?"
I'm gonna
Whatever.
go back to sleep, never mind.
Exactly. It was amazing. So, let's talk. Do you have any other type of encounters of anything kind of leaves you scratching your head?
I have several, but like I said, they kind of delve more into the oogie boogie um stuff that I really would prefer not to get
Okay.
into on this kind of a show.
Okay, perfect.
So
No, I appreciate that because the kind of the oogie boogie type things, I kind of stay away from it as much as I can.
I try to as well, and that's also the same thing with Bigfoot and stuff too. So I proudly wear the hat of being a couch researcher. There's some great people out there who do the boots on the ground.
Mhm.
I personally am not one of those people. Do I go out into the woods? Do I have a good time? Um, am I always got my head on a swivel looking? Absolutely, but I don't go out there looking for Bigfoot and other cryptids on purpose.
Right.
And that's because I don't want to ever accidentally bring anything home
Bingo.
because people don't realize with these things that there is a woo factor, whether you
Mhm.
want to admit it or not, where people have gone out there looking for these things and then stuff follows them home. So I don't want to be that person. And so that's something that I've gotten a little kickback on about, but I'm like, hey, that's my reason why, and I'm sticking to it, and I ain't got no problem with it.
Yeah. No, I get it. So, okay, so let's kind of flip back to page 1. Let's talk about the museum again. So,
Okay,
and what I'm going to ask is, I'm just going to ask a couple of questions, and you don't have to go into great detail if you don't want to.
okay,
Um, so, in the 4 almost 5 years that you've been there,
correct.
what is one of the most insane but exciting stories that just a random person that came off and you may have watched them just kind of, they came through the door, you introduced them, you told them whatever, and they walked around, but for some reason you notice this person like they wanted to tell you something, and after they walked through the museum they came up and said, "Hey, I gotta tell you something."
Oh,
What would that be?
that actually happens all the time.
Oh, I figured it did.
So, it does all the time. Because 'cause I'll 100% admit whenever I saw that the Bigfoot Museum was opening up here in North Georgia, I didn't have high hopes for it. I was really like, "Oh, man, this our area is becoming more of a tourist area, now we're gonna have this corny thing here."
Hmm.
And it's actually the 100% the exact opposite as I've described. It's very serious on the subject matter. They present it in a very professional manner and not in a tongue-in-cheek kind of way.
Yeah.
So a lot of people when they come in, if they're bringing in their kids and their families, they're there to have a good time, and then they come in and realize, this is we do take this as a very serious subject matter, and it does allow people to have those open conversations. I'll have people come up to me at the desk there all the time, or the register, and so what do you think about this stuff? And I'm like, well, I 100% believe that there's something out there. I've talked to one too many people who've shared their experiences. Sometimes depending on the person, I'll kind of read the room if I'll mention, well, yeah, I've had my own experiences and stuff. So as that goes, sometimes I'll go into that. But anyway, 90% of the time that starts how the conversation starts. So what do you think about all this?
Hmm.
Like they're trying to feel me out. And, I'll tell them, yeah, absolutely, there's something to this. And they're like, as I start, we have a little bit of back and forth, then it'll come into well, I haven't told anybody a lot about this stuff, but I've had something crazy happen to me, or yeah, those sounds you've heard got back there. Yeah, I've heard that before. It's weekly.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy. Like in a lot of other um um, what's the word I'm looking for? Medical fields,
Hmm.
retail or whatever. Everything will go in like in phases. We'll have like a few weeks where it's a dry spell. We don't have any good stories come in. It's just regular tourists, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And then all of a sudden, it's like somebody flipped a switch, and then for like 2 weeks, it's like daily. I have like 5 people coming in, and Sherry's like, "Hang on a second, I'm trying to help," or I'm on the phone with somebody for like an hour and a half talking to them.
Yeah.
But one of the first, three stories come to mind when you said that, when somebody, told, the description that you were playing up with me, is one was actually for a dog man, somebody shared with me. So in the gift shop, we had these little figurines. We have a Sasquatch, we have a Mothman, and at one time there was a little like dog man werewolf like figurine. And I was over there folding the t-shirts and just making sure everything was, going good, and his customers were going in and out. And, I didn't like this little toy. I thought it was creepy myself as well. I didn't wanna look at it, but we had it. And anyway, I overheard the a husband and wife, and apparently she had picked up the little dog man toy, and she's like, "Look at this, honey, is like this," and he turns and looks at it, he gets mad. Like, he's like, "Put that thing down. I don't wanna look at that ugly thing." And I was just kinda, my ears are listening, and I'm
Mhm.
like, "Hey, what's going on here?" And he's like, "That's exactly what that thing looked like. I don't want. Why would they have a toy like that? It's so great." And so
Man.
I forget how I initiated the conversation with him, but I did. I started talking to him, and he shared a dog manning a sighting that he had as a teen, and I can't remember exactly where it was, but he was laying in bed late at night, and late summer, so, he had the windows open, it was just the screens, and he remembered for whatever reason, something woke him up out of a dead sleep, and where his bed was at, he could see straight outside, and he saw, outside and, hayfield and everything, so it was very open, but he said he saw this dog man werewolf, he called it a werewolf, walk into his frame of vision, get up, and was like on two legs and sniffing and smelling the air like it was hunting something, kind of looks towards the house, almost like it knows it could see him,
Mhm.
but then keeps smelling, hops back down, and then keeps on walking away. And he
No.
said that that toy that we had was identical to what he saw, that thing. And he said,
Mhm.
I try not to remember it because, I was half asleep. And again, just like my repressed memory, he's like, I try not to remember it, but certain things cause it to come back.
Yep.
He said it was a werewolf. That's the only thing he could describe it as. And another one of my favorite stories from the museum is one of my early days of working there. I had a gentleman come in, real big country guy, old man with the beard, the ball cap, the Liberty overalls,
Mhm.
and he walks right on up in there and says, "Y'all got any sounds that I can listen to in these things?" And I said, "Actually, yes, sir, we do. There's a whole exhibit over here that has, audio. It's a 20-minute thing of different audio clips, and it's really cool how David's got it with, what's the words I'm looking for? Is it the spectrum where you can look at the different, octaves and, hertz and that kinda stuff? I
Yeah,
forgot.
I think I like the yeah, so where you'll see, like, dance up and you'll whatever.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and it compares it like, the dogs are barking here, but
Mhm.
then the Bigfoot vocalization is up here. I apologize, my vocabulary is not working this evening. But anyway, I was telling him, "Yeah, we got this whole station for that." So I, let him and his wife buy his ticket and send them on through. And sure enough, he comes back out, and he says, "I've heard exactly what that was." And he described which audio clip it was, and he said, I've heard that exact thing. I've had something like that run me out of my deer camp." And
Oh.
he described, and it's up here, up here in Caches Valley, and he said he had his little. He said, "I'm getting older, so I got me a little hunting camper up there." And he said, "I'd went on up in there to my camper, and he got it all set up." And he started walking away from his camper to go up to his hunting blind or his deer stand, and for whatever reason, he just got this weird feeling, and then he started hearing chatter, hearing the what we now know as the samurai chatter.
Mhm.
And so for whatever he's like got that gut feeling, so he just turned around and started walking back to his camper. and he kept hearing it, but it was coming on two sides of him.
Oh, no.
And he got back to his camper, and he's sitting there trying to figure out what to do. And he's just sitting there, just listening, being real quiet. But his camper is right next to the creek, and all of a sudden he starts getting pebbled. The camper starts getting pebbled, and then the creek is getting rocks thrown into it.
Mhm.
And he says once it finally got to where it let out one of the big loud, like Ohio howl style vocalizations, and a big old thunk, goosh, dumping a giant rock into the creek beside him. He's like, yeah, it's time to go. So he was sharing that story with me, but I always have this image of that guy walking into the museum like, y'all got any of them vote howls I can listen to?
Yep.
Or sounds?
I
So
love it.
that was great, because I love seeing local faces come in. Being a born and raised local for this area, it's very nice to have a place where people like us
Mhm.
country bumpkins, can come in and talk about
Yep.
things that go bump in the night and that people won't make fun of you about. So it's really nice.
Well, there's
But one of my personal
Okay.
favorites
Go ahead.
was actually one that an encounter that I took from two witnesses probably about a year ago now. So, full disclosure, I've actually worked at the museum twice. I worked for 2 years, from 2019 until middle of certain things that happened in 2020.
Yep.
And unfortunately, my husband lost his job at that time period. So we had previously lived in North Dakota for a while. He had jobs up there in the oil field. So when that happened, they called him up and said, "Hey, buddy, you want a job again?" So as much as I hated leaving the museum, we had to do what we had to do. So we went back up to North Dakota for a couple of years.
Yeah.
So I came back. And the reason I mentioned that time period is because in that time period, David took one of the coolest, bizarre, woo, whatever you want to call it, reports then. And if you go on, there's a documentary called Paranormal Bigfoot, where he retells this particular encounter. And I was like, man, how crazy and cool was getting that encounter. And I can tell it as well myself. You know what? Sure, I'll tell both of them. Why not? So, David got this crazy story of a local guy here. He came in, much older gentleman, and he came in with his family, his adult children and grandchildren. And David said it was a really busy day, so he said he wished he could have talked to him more, but the guy came up to him, he says, "I got a story I got to share with you before I die." And
Oh.
he's already like, "Okay, I'm listening." But he says the guy is recounting this story, he said it's so bizarre and so out there that he's looking at the family members kind of, side to side as they're talking. And he's looking, it's like, this guy isn't baloneying me here.
Yeah.
He's like, the kids are looking, it's like, I dare you to say that my grandpa's making this story up.
Yeah.
So he's listening. And so here, right here in LJ, there's Tolona Ridge, and this would have been back in the 70s, and even in the late 90s, 2000s, that's the teenager hangout spot. You would drive up to the top of the hill up there because there's a big open view. You can see all around. That's where everybody went to go and hang out in the evenings, do what teenagers do.
Hang
And
out.
yep, exactly. So this guy was recounting the story that he had the party van. And so all the kids in high school, they wanted to go get in his van and go drive up to the top of Tolona Mountain. And he had a particular neighbor kid that, he also knew in school, but was, on the neighbors down the road. They would get on the same bus together and that kind of stuff. Anyway, and he was real reclusive. He was the shy, the quiet kid. But somehow or another, I forget how he was involved. David, again, has more of the details he's recounted. But anyway, the older man who's recounting the story, I'm going to just refer to him as the driver now because he was driving the van. It was his sister beside him in the passenger seat, and then a couple other of their buddies behind them, along with that one reclusive kid
Mhm.
was in the back of the van. And they're driving up to Lona Mountain here, and something happened that he was looking over at his sister, and the sister's turning and looks back behind them, and she is all of a sudden starts losing her absolute mind. She's freaking out. Everybody behind them is freaking out, not knowing what is going on. They're seeing something. So he stops, and as he's doing so, he bumps the lights, the overhead headlights, and hits it to where it illuminates the back of the van, and where this kid, the reclusive kid, was sitting, a Bigfoot is now sitting there, but it's wearing this kid's clothes. And it's looking around like it's freaking out. They're freaking out. Everybody's freaking out. And the guy somehow or another gets the van stopped and jumps out of it. Everybody jumps out. And I forget how the details come about, but the kid comes back, and all of a sudden he's like, "What's happening? What's going on? Why is everybody freaking out?" So David and the driver who recounted the story, can't remember or if the kid and a Bigfoot, switched places dimensionally for a second,
What?
or if the kid transformed into one or something like that happened, but it was super crazy. And the guy stood on it for, literally until as he's sharing it as more or less a deathbed confession. And it messed up two of the girls that were in the van with them so bad that they had to seek psychiatric help in Atlanta. And after that happened, the reclusive kid and their family, they moved. They left after that incident happened, they moved out of the area. So that has always just been just like the,
That
creme de la creme of the top of the craziest stories that I've ever heard. Because I've heard other stories since working at the museum of people seeing Bigfoot as, a classic road crossing, except there's only the top of it. You can't see the underside of it. It's like
I've heard
Predator
that. I've heard
as it's
that.
going through. There's been other reports of them wearing clothes. That's not an uncommon thing. People have seen them and hearing them wearing clothes. So in my mind, I'm always like, God, I can't imagine trying to process that. So I'm always thinking, how crazy would it be if I took a report
Yeah.
like that? And sure enough, now that I'm working back at the museum again, I'm hearing this story. I'm like, man, that's crazy. And I'm actually wearing one of the museum shirts, and did that on purpose because I thought I would share this story.
Oh,
So
it's a nice shirt.
this is the logo for the museum, and as you can see, half of it is the creature, and
Yep.
then the other half is the Desunequa mask,
Right.
the native tribal mask. So it's showing the duality of the creature.
Absolutely.
But I mentioned that because as you come into the museum, we give a little like presentation speech, but as it comes, welcome to the museum. If you look over here, you'll find this, and don't forget to look over here and pick up the headphones as kind of a hype up like you would for classic carnival ride kind of.
Yeah. Yep.
So I'm doing that with these two ladies, and they already seem like really good fun people, best friends, and I get to talking to them, and I'm doing my speech thing to them, but they're just kind of whispering, like they're not paying attention to me, pointing, and they're pointing at my shirt, and all of a sudden one of them just says like, she's like, you're just gonna think that I'm crazy, and the other one's just like, no, you can talk to her, it's okay. It's just like, and I've heard some pretty crazy things, lady. It's okay, you can talk to me. And she said that the dreadlocks, they called it, on the mask
Uh-huh.
here. She said, I've seen that on a Bigfoot before. I'm like, okay. So she recounts a story to me, and it is my van story. So these two ladies were in Colorado. One of them, I forget which one, she is Native American. She's 100%. She's whatever. I forget. I apologize. I wish I could remember which tribe it is that's out there. But they were at a powwow, and they were at a at a fire. Anyway, I'm sorry. It was a big get together with a big bonfire, and they were there with a whole bunch of other people, and they were kind of in the back of the crowd. And they said they've already the one lady has already been really kind of in tune with that sixth sense kind of feeling her whole life. And she said both of them just got instantly that tingly feeling on the back of your neck, like,
Yep.
look at, and they said they turn and they look, and there's this Sasquatch standing right there beside them. And it had very short, matted hair that looked identical to what they called the dreadlocks on my shirt, and that's what made them point and was looking at it, and they said this thing, it looked at them, looked down at them, just kinda smiled, and said kinda just did like that, nodded its head at them, and said almost like a, "Yeah, you're seeing me. Yeah, you're seeing me, I'm okay."
Shut
But
the
it was
front
wearing
door.
It was wearing a shirt, like a men's business shirt, but it was all muddy and everything, and God, I wish I had remembered to have asked them if the sleeves were ripped out like, the Incredible Hulk or something, but I
Ugh,
didn't ask them that question. But they said it was putting on these clothes as it looks at them, does that nod thing, and keeps walking further into the crowd, and as it's walking, it's putting these clothes on and it's morphing.
yep.
They watch it morph from Sasquatch to human
Yep.
in that as it's good, and they're just like, but as they look over and the gentleman, there's a guy who's standing beside him, he's just there with his jaw hung open too. He saw the whole thing too. And I'm trying to take all of this in, but also keep a straight face at the same time because I'm 100% a Bigfoot nerd. So in my
Yeah.
mind, I'm going like, "Oh my god, am I actually getting my crazy story right now?" But also trying to be keep a straight face and
Right.
show and take in all the details and not be a weirdo in front of these ladies. Should be respectful to
You're
them.
you're geeking out.
I'm geeking out inside, and they're just like, you probably think I'm crazy. You probably think you're crazy." I'm like, "No, trust me, I get it." And so I share with them and they go on through the museum and I'm just trying to process everything and like, "Oh my gosh, that I just got my crazy story."
That's amazing.
And so I still just think it's so crazy, and so I do every single time I put on my shirt in the morning because we wear the logo shirt is our uniform. So every time I put it on in the morning and I look at the logo and I see that, I remember that
Yep.
lady's story because I'm looking at the dreadlocks that she remembers that creature had. She says that they wasn't long, big long ones like you hear or straight, it was very matted kind of just little dreadlocks.
Wow. So let's kind of change gears just a little bit. We're gonna go back into the museum here. So I assume when people visit, you guys have like a sign-in book, and oh, I'm from here, I'm from there.
Yes.
Where is the farthest that someone's come to visit your museum?
Oh, gracious. So we've actually had lots of international visitors. Here recently, we've had a lot of people from Europe. I've had people from Germany, France, the Netherlands, Ukraine, Russia, China, Japan, Laos, and Vietnam,
Nice.
Australia, New Zealand, South America, Canada, Alaska.
So
Yeah, I've
you've had people. You're international, like you said.
international, yeah, people from all over have been there, and it's so cool, and that's one of the things I do when people come up to the museum gate to get inside, and how I'll start the conversation to give them the little speech, and so, "Where are you guys visiting from?" And I usually expecting, Florida or Alabama or Atlanta, and then they spout out something like, Scotland or something at me. I'm like, "Oh."
New Zealand or Australia or whatever. That'd be
And
great.
I'll try to throw in a little Bigfoot fact out, like, if they say Australia, I'm like, "Oh, you're in Yowie territory, huh?"
Yep.
To see
Nice.
if they know and kinda start that conversation and the wheels turning for them because a
Yep.
lot of people, they don't know about it, and they're like, "What are you talking about?" Or if they do know about it, then I'm like, "Oh, maybe I can, reel some stories out of them."
Yep. That's awesome. And my last question for you. because
Yes.
this is a great interview. This is like, I think, my second or third longest interview. I love it.
Oh,
I could
fun.
talk, I
Yeah.
could talk
I'm
to you all
looking at
night
this
long.
recording. We've been, what, an hour or 15 minutes more or
Yeah.
less, which is actually kind of average for me. So
Yeah.
this is not that long.
Um, what is one of your most favorite exhibits or items in the museum?
Oh, gracious. So there are two. Um, for myself personally, there is a cast um, that was donated to the museum in 2019, right when I first started working there, by a family here in North Georgia, from Ranger here in North Georgia. And I was there whenever they brought it, and I got to meet the family and hold it and everything like that. And when they gave the address of where their property was at, and I looked at it, it was only 8 miles from my house.
Oh,
So that
cool.
was a little close to home. So that one's very special because that was one of my first big ones, where I got to hold a fresh cast, a one of a kind. It hasn't been replicated yet or anything.
Nice.
My main favorite one that's there is actually a pair of overalls that was donated to the museum, and I wish I could remember the gentleman's name, but it's all in the display there, if you visit the museum. This gentleman donated those overalls. He was prospecting in Alaska, and many years prior, he had a run in with a very young Sasquatch, like a teenage Sasquatch, and he had raised his protection that he had on
Mhm,
him at it, but then changed his mind and decided not to engage,
mhm,
and he let it go free because he's like, it's not bothering me, and it looked way too human. So fast forward 10 years later, he's on the banks of the river in Alaska, and he's got all his gear on, and he falls in the river and he's drowning. All this stuff is weighing him down. Suddenly something grabs him by those overall straps and sets him back up on the shoreline.
oh my god.
It's that same Bigfoot that he had let go years prior, except now it was a little bit older, but he could very distinguishedly tell that it was the same one. So that gentleman has donated those overalls, and his story and those overalls are on display at the museum.
Yeah, I need to head up and check this place out. I really, really do. Um, Question for you is, what do
Yes.
you think they are?
Oh, gracious. People have asked me that quite often, and I not only do I think that they are flesh and blood because obviously they leave physical evidence, tangible physical evidence here for us to research, to see, to touch, to feel, to see, to witness, but they also have so many paranormal, supernatural-esque, insert adjective there, abilities to these things, that there's got to be something more to it than just a big monkey in the woods.
Right.
They are extremely intelligent. They have family units. They have these special abilities. Their intelligence is off the charts. So, I personally don't really pitch my tent or my flag in one particular camp. I am open to all possibilities because nobody has the answers to what these things are. Are they, again, just big monkeys, Gigantopithecus? Are they descendants of the Watchers and the Nephilim in the Bible? Are they interdimensional beings brought here by aliens or whatever?
Mhm,
Are they intradimensional beings from our inner Earth? There's so many different theories out there,
and I've heard them all.
and yeah, exactly. I've heard them all, and all of them could work. I mean, like, again, I wish could say that I have a better answer that I say, I 100% think that this is that they are. Do I definitely kind of lean more towards one or the other? Possibly, but again, I am open to all of it
Yeah,
because nobody has the answers.
yeah. Okay, so I would love for you to do 2 things. 1,
Okay,
let's plug the museum,
absolutely. So the museum I work for is Expedition Bigfoot, the Sasquatch Museum, and that is in Blue Ridge, Georgia. And when I say Expedition Bigfoot, I'm not meaning the TV show. We tease all the time that we are the original Expedition Bigfoot. And if you want to find any information, you can just find the museum information at expeditionbigfoot.com. Again, that's expeditionbigfoot.com, and they have a huge gallery there. You can have your frequently asked questions. There's even a contact us section there if you wanted to reach out to David and or Melinda about any of your personal encounters that you might want to share with the museum. You can do that on the website as well as just Google it. You'll find lots of information. Oh, and definitely check out the Facebook page for the museum. David still runs that, and so he posts out all cool witness encounters that he gets in frequently that he can share publicly. Like he just shared one today. Cool YouTube videos that he'll come across, and lots of other good Bigfoot information out there. So yeah, definitely check out the Facebook page as well.
And what's the name of the Facebook page?
Just Expedition Bigfoot.
Okay.
And make sure that it's the museum logo.
Okay. And I would love for you to plug you. Let's where can we find you and things like that?
Absolutely. So you can find me as Amanda the Bigfoot Lady on all my social media platforms. Right now, TikTok is kind of my main. I also use Facebook and Instagram. I'm branching out into YouTube currently as I am organically growing right now. I've also recently become a full-time co-host on the Squatch and Holler podcast. So you can find them on YouTube. Me and Roger, you'll find us there. We're slowly working on building up a schedule. But yeah, definitely check out Squatch and Holler. It's been a really fun ride joining my podcast journey here apparently recently. But also, if anybody wants to reach out to me, you can catch me on any of those social media platforms. You can just direct message me, or you can email me directly at amandathebigfootlady@gmail.com. Hopefully that should be pretty easy to remember.
Awesome. Hey, I don't know if you know this, but from what I understand through Roger, you guys are having a really cool guest on May 1st.
Yes, I am super stoked for that.
Now, do you know who that guy is?
Yes, I think so. I feel really bad. I'm like, I need to look at the schedule. And
It's
remember
me.
who that is. It's you. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm just gonna go in the corner and hide now.
Amanda.
Oh, wait, put my foot in my mouth.
I got to tell you right now, this was easily one of my favorite interviews I've done on the show. You are a tremendous guest. You're an amazing human being and person.
Thank you.
A lovely lady. Thank you for all the knowledge and the stories that you've provided for us tonight. And I actually look forward to working with you in the future.
Absolutely. Please, let's continue to keep in touch and work back and forth together. The more minds that we can put together in this subject matter, as I tease all the time, the more pieces to the puzzle that we have, and the more brains that we can pick back and forth, the more pieces to the puzzle we can find and start putting together on this subject.
Absolutely, absolutely. So with that being said, if you want to hang out in the lobby just for a minute, I'm going to close the show out.
Absolutely.
And I'll be right back with you.
Awesome. Thank you, Daniel.
Hey, anytime. Thank you for coming on the show. And you know what? You have an open invite to the show at any time.
Awesome.
All right. I'll see you in a little bit.
Yes, sir.
Everybody, there you go. Amanda the Bigfoot Lady. You guys, this is an amazing interview. I really enjoyed it. Great stories, great encounters. And speaking of stories and encounters, if anybody out there has had a story that you'd like to share or has had an encounter, sighting, and you don't know what to do with it, and you'd like to come on the show and talk about it, please email me at thecryptidpodcast72@gmail.com. Again, thecryptidpodcast72@gmail.com. As my buddy Josh always says, from Mysteries Unknown, he always says, stay prayed up. And what I always like to say is, remember, a legend always starts with a sighting. Have a good night, everybody, and I'll see you next time.
I got a strange going on out here. Something just killed my dog.
Something killed your dog?